Okay, what can you expect to learn on Hung Kuen On Demand through the streaming process? So as a beginner, you actually will learn warm-up exercises, the drills that we do in our classes. These are supplementary exercises, appear to be calisthenics, but they actually work your body, build some body positioning, help limber you up. Then you'll learn some fundamental basic punches that we do as drills. Then we have the horse stance drills, the low block, high block, different techniques. Then you move on to form. Forms are sequences that you would learn starting with what would be taught at the school would be our plum flower fist form, and then moving on. Each one of our forms is a category, and we use a belt system at our school, but because you're learning online, you would probably not be so focused on the belt level. But learning online is a challenge, but we understand learning through streaming, the movements have to be broken down and taught in much smaller bits. So learning online will not be just mimicking the form sequence. You'll see the form sequence, but you also will see the different components that make up that form, which will help you learn and build that sequence. So that's something that you actually won't get studying by copying a form on YouTube. Although if you're very, very experienced, you can actually mimic a form. Now, aside from sequence, you have to understand the concepts and the theory behind why we do the forms a certain way and why the position is a certain way. None of that can be understood the first time around. Now, that's for the novice. And then as you evolve, there'll be tutorials on some of the explanations, some of explanation of the techniques involved and why certain movements should be done a certain way. As you get to be intermediate or even to the teacher level, teachers may not need to learn sequence because you already have a pretty good foundation of the Hung Gar forms. And many people have studied Hung Gar for many years, but need some tutoring on the theory behind what's involved in our style and what theories and principles and philosophy is critical in evolving and teaching students to a more advanced level. Now these basic bits of information are very valuable. So what would you learn in a theoretical class? Why certain things are done a certain way? Well, we would talk about why you would stand in this position. You start off with your feet 3.5, 4 inches apart. Where's the shoulder width stance? How to open your stance by pivoting your feet at different angles to open the stance. And then we talk about on a theoretical basis, or maybe some of the sort of poetry that's used to describe movement. So in learning martial arts, there's a lot of metaphors used so that you can begin to understand the concept behind it. Say for in Hung Gar, we have a movement that we push out, but everyone just kind of copies the movement. But did you know that the theory behind that is to sink the elbow, relax the shoulder, align the elbow and shoulder? That's a concept, and that theory is actually discussed in the class. There's also what I call the 5 coordinations: hand, eye, body, waist, and stance. Those are the 5 coordinations that has to be understood, that the hands and eyes are coordinated, the eyes follow the hands, that the body has body form, that the hands have specific techniques. The body form is your posture. The waist, that it turns and rotates and power comes from the waist. And the stance are your legs. There's a leaning stance, there's a horse stance, there's cross stance. Why is there a specific position for your stances, the weight distribution, and then the footwork. How do you move from one stance to another? Those are the kind of things discussed so that you're not clumsy on your feet, that you have strength from the legs. We discuss upper-lower coordination. What does that mean? That's discussed in the workshops or discussed in the tutorials. So there's a lot of things that sometimes need to be discussed. Say in a horse stance, when we draw the bridge, why does it have to be shoulder height? Why does the forearm have to be in a certain position? These are things that are very important and valuable to the Hung Gar practitioner. And on the theoretical level, it's not just discussed. You have to understand the theory in order to execute the movement correctly. And for you to advance, it's not just do it like this. There's a reason to do it a certain way. And when you start to understand that reasoning, it actually will help you break through what I call the thresholds. The thresholds is when you do your form over and over again. You do it 10 times a day, 100 times a day, whatever the amount of times you say, I don't see any improvement in the way I'm doing it, other than what? The memory of the form. The more you do it, the better you get at it, but it doesn't improve your execution because your body is not understanding what it should be doing. There's a sequential timing, an order of movement, a direction of movement. What should I move now? What should I move later? Where should the position be? All of this is critical. When you open the hand, when they're parallel, when you sink the elbow and you make a fist, how much strength did you pull in? When do you drop your hand and when do you pull in? Those are the kind of things. How do you open? When you open, where's the position? All of these things are critical to define the single components inside your form. Now, Hung Gar has 12 bridges in the INY form, but it's also 12 bridges throughout the form. All of those need to be understood and discussed. What is a cover hand? What is a pick? Why is it this position? Why is it in a leaning stand? All of these things have to be understood. Then you're not just kind of blindly going through your movement, mimicking it, going through it at a blazing fast speed and not even knowing what you're trying to do with it. So those are the theoretical components that need to be understood as a teacher, as an advanced student, as someone that wants to evolve beyond the level of recreation. So there's people all over the globe that probably said, oh, I kind of saw that before. I seem to have heard that, or maybe you've never heard this before. But if you haven't heard this, it's probably something you should be listening to. And listening to and seeing and understanding. And then once you've experienced what you need to work with, then at some point that dialogue will turn into something much more valuable and important to you. So if you're a Hung Gar practitioner and you need to go through some of these tutorials, then you should email us again and let us know that it's something you're interested in. I'm reaching out to you. Please give us some feedback and we can discuss it and ask some questions and we can address those in another session of recording, and then we'll see where that leads.
Before you go, could you describe to people the 4 forms that are in the initial curriculum?
Mm-hmm. So for a beginner, the 4 forms that are taught initially is the plum flower fist form, Moi Fa Kun. The second form we teach is Lao Ga Kun, the Lao family fist form. The third form is a little bit different. It's called Bang Bu Kun. It's a praying mantis form. It's called breaking step in the translation. And then we teach the 4th form, which has been taught by our grandmaster in many, many workshops. It's called the war palm fist form. So those 4 forms are our initial sequences that are taught. A lot of material in those 4 forms. Each form, actually, as you progress, gets a little more complicated, a little more intricate, and when you get to the 4th form, it gets longer and a little bit more complicated. However, building sequential sequences in form is part of building muscle memory. What's inside the form? All your techniques. It's a book of movement. What's inside the legwork? The mapping of your form. And those mapping, those methods that are built in the form is really part of the footwork methods. One of the 5 coordinations that I just mentioned. So wait to hear from you and we'll see what happens.